Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelenskyy is making one thing crystal clear. No decisions about Ukraine's future will be made without Ukraine at the table. As the world braces for a historic summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in Alaska this Friday, Zelenskyy has secured something Putin desperately wanted to prevent: unified European and NATO backing. This isn't just diplomatic theater. This is Ukraine fighting for its survival against what could be the most consequential meeting since World War II. So what exactly is happening behind closed doors? And why is Putin suddenly so eager to meet Trump on American soil? The story begins with a deadline that came and went. For weeks, Trump had been threatening new sanctions against Russia if Putin didn't agree to halt the conflict by August 9th. But instead of sanctions, Trump shocked the world last Friday by announcing he would hold a summit with Putin on August 15th in Alaska.
Overstate how incredible it is between the President of the United States and the President of Russia meeting to speak, of course, about the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia in Alaska next week. What will come of it, I think, is the key question here, Vaughn.
Right. Yasmin, this is just in literally the last few moments here, the president posting on his social media account that he next Friday, August 15th, will be meeting face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Now, he had flirted with the idea of sitting down for a bilateral meeting with the Russian president here. This comes, we should note, today was supposed to be the deadline. There's an idea of a 10-day deadline that he had given Russia.
The breaking news sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, with news anchors emphasizing the incredible significance of direct talks between the U.S. and Russian presidents regarding the Ukraine-Russia war. The location isn't random. Alaska was sold by Russia to the United States 158 years ago for just $7.2 million. Now Putin is hoping to sell Trump on a land deal of the century, one that would force Ukraine to hand over chunks of territory Russia hasn't even been able to fully occupy. The conditions around this summit are so wildly favorable to Moscow that it's obvious why Putin leaped at the chance after months of fake negotiations. Trump has already signaled that any peace deal would involve territorial exchanges between the two nations.
Back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. And but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever. And we're going to have a meeting with Russia. We'll start off with Russia, and we'll announce a location. I think the location will be a very popular one for a lot of reasons. But we'll be announcing that a little bit later. I just don't want to do it now because of the importance of what we just did.
In recent statements, he's acknowledged that after 3.5 years of fighting with significant casualties on both sides, there would likely be territorial adjustments as part of any settlement. But here's the problem with that math. Ukraine controls only around 4 square miles of Russian territory in the Kursk region. Russia, meanwhile, occupies nearly a fifth of Ukraine's sovereign territory. That's not a swap, that's surrender. And that's exactly what has Zelenskyy and European leaders scrambling to prevent what could be a complete betrayal of Ukraine. The Ukrainian president wasted no time making his position clear.
But all partners must understand what a dignified peace is. This war must be ended, and Russia must end it. Russia started it and is dragging it out, not listening to any deadlines. And this is the problem, not something else. Accordingly, the Ukrainian territorial issue is already in the Constitution of Ukraine.
He emphasized that the war cannot be ended without Ukraine's involvement, stating that Ukraine's territorial integrity is enshrined in its constitution and that any decisions made without Ukraine's participation would be stillborn and unworkable. He's absolutely right to be concerned. A White House official said that while the possibility exists for Ukrainian participation in the summit, preparations were currently focused on a bilateral meeting between Trump and Putin.
For being here. First, I want to just state the obvious, which is that there is a key player currently not slated to be in Alaska, and that is the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Is it possible he will attend?
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible, and it's good to be with you this morning. Certainly there can't be a deal that everybody that's involved in it doesn't agree to. And, obviously it's a high priority to get this war to end. The carnage and the dying is terrible. I think this direct engagement by President Trump obviously is leading us closer to a peace. The two sides have been communicating. They've exchanged prisoners. They've exchanged bodies of the fallen. But if we can get a deal done on terms that both sides agree, that will save thousands of lives. And ultimately, I think that's worth at least seeing if there's a chance to get that done.
You say it is possible that President Zelenskyy joins Presidents Putin and Trump in Alaska. Where do those discussions stand?
Well, obviously, the decision is going to be made by President Trump. He agreed to meet with President Putin in Alaska on Friday. And if he thinks that is the best scenario to invite Zelenskyy, then he'll do that. And again, we have, today's Sunday. The meeting's happening on Friday. There's time to make that decision.
The revelation that Ukraine's president might be able to attend came as European and Ukrainian officials pressed for inclusion in any negotiations that would determine Ukraine's fate. The Kremlin leader last week ruled out meeting Zelenskyy entirely, saying the conditions for such an encounter were unfortunately still far from being met. Putin's conditions are simple. He wants Ukraine to surrender the entire eastern Donbas region, give up its NATO aspirations, and accept Russian control over Crimea and 4 other Ukrainian regions. In other words, Putin wants Ukraine to reward his aggression with massive territorial concessions. This is where Europe stepped in with unprecedented unity. On Saturday, the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Finland, and the European Commission issued a joint statement that any diplomatic solution must protect the security interests of Ukraine and Europe. They made it clear, international borders must not be changed by force. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas delivered an even stronger message on Sunday.
Russia's intention to try to deceive America. We will not allow this. I greatly value the determination with which President Trump is committed to stopping deaths in this war. And every day, many people give their lives. But the sole root cause of these killings is Putin's desire to wage war and manipulate everyone with whom he comes into contact.
European officials firmly stated that they cannot accept territorial issues being decided between Russia and America over the heads of Europeans or Ukrainians, emphasizing that close coordination with American partners is essential and that any deal must include Ukraine and the EU for it to address the security of Ukraine and all of Europe. This isn't just diplomatic language, it's a direct challenge to Trump's apparent willingness to cut a deal over Ukraine's head. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte added crucial weight to Europe's position. He told ABC News that Friday's summit will be about testing Putin, how serious he is on bringing this terrible war to an end. But Rutte made something else absolutely clear. Ukraine must decide its own future as a sovereign nation. He even compared any potential deal to the post-World War II situation, where the United States never legally recognized Soviet control over the Baltic states, even when accepting it as a de facto reality. The timing of this European unity isn't accidental. European leaders are terrified that Trump and Putin might try to dictate terms for ending the war without Ukrainian input. They've seen this playbook before. In 1938, when European powers tried to appease Hitler by carving up Czechoslovakia without Czech representation. The result was catastrophic, and Europe is determined not to repeat that mistake. Behind the scenes, there's been an intensive diplomatic effort to get U.S. allies on board before the Alaska summit. Vice President J.D. Vance and UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy hosted a crucial meeting in Kent with Ukrainian and European officials at the request of the United States. European officials laid out their non-negotiable terms. Ukraine must be involved in any talks, a ceasefire must be in place before other steps are taken, and if Ukraine makes territorial concessions, Russia must also give up land it currently occupies. The Europeans also demanded clarity on U.S. security guarantees going forward, something that remains murky in Trump's proposal. This European pushback carries real weight because Europe has stepped up massively to support Ukraine. 4 European countries, the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, just committed over $1 billion for American weapons that Ukraine will receive. NATO allies provided over 50 billion euros in security assistance in 2024, with nearly 60% coming from European allies and Canada. In 2025, European allies have already committed an additional 35 billion euros in security assistance. But there's a deeper strategic game being played here. Putin believes he's winning the war and can achieve his goal of subjugating Ukraine entirely. Russia analysts say Putin is convinced he can strip Ukraine of its military capacity and block it from joining NATO. The Ukrainian conflict has shown Putin that even small delays and complications can have massive effects on military operations. Russia's initial assumption that it could capture Kyiv in days was shattered by Ukrainian resistance. Now Putin faces a different challenge, convincing Trump to abandon Ukraine while Europe stands united in opposition. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Trump agrees to Putin's demands in Alaska, it would represent the largest territorial change in Europe since World War II. It would signal to authoritarian leaders worldwide that aggression pays off if you can outlast Western attention spans. China would be watching closely for lessons about Taiwan. Every dictator with territorial ambitions would see Ukraine's dismemberment as a green light for their own adventures. But Ukraine isn't going down without a fight. Zelenskyy has made it clear that Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier.
We cannot accept that territorial issues between Russia and America are discussed or even decided over the heads of the Europeans or the Ukrainians. I assume that the American government feels the same way. That is why there is such close coordination. This will continue in the coming days. We will continue this in Berlin as well. We hope that there will be a breakthrough on Friday. Above all, we hope there will finally be a ceasefire.
In recent addresses, he's expressed appreciation for international support, while warning about Russia's intentions to deceive America, emphasizing Ukraine's deep understanding of Russia and their determination to defend their independence. He's backed by a European coalition that's finally woken up to the existential threat Putin represents. The question now is whether Trump will stand with America's democratic allies or cut a deal that would echo through history as one of the greatest betrayals of the post-war order. What makes this even more dramatic is that Putin is traveling to U.S. soil for the first time in over a decade. He's subject to an International Criminal Court arrest warrant for war crimes, but neither Russia nor the United States are signatories to the Rome Statute, so he won't face arrest. Putin has been careful about his travel since the warrant was issued, declining invitations to countries that might detain him. The fact that he's willing to come to Alaska shows how confident he is that this summit will go his way. European leaders aren't just hoping for the best, they're preparing for the worst. There are discussions about sending European peacekeepers to Ukraine if a deal is reached, with at least 20 countries expressing interest in joining a coalition of the willing to support Ukraine. Countries considering peacekeeping roles include Australia, Ireland, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Turkey, which has NATO's second largest army after the United States. This isn't just about Ukraine anymore. European leaders understand that if Putin succeeds in Alaska, he won't stop with Ukraine. The Baltic states, Poland, and other former Soviet territories would be next on his list. That's why Europe is finally stepping up with the kind of defense spending and unity that should have happened years ago. The Alaska summit represents a moment of truth for the Western alliance. Will America stand with its democratic partners in defending the principle that borders can't be changed by force? Or will Trump hand Putin his greatest victory since he took power, the effective partition of Ukraine and the collapse of the post-war international order? Zelenskyy and Europe have drawn their line in the sand. Ukraine will not be sacrificed for a false peace that only emboldens further aggression. The world is watching to see if America will stand with its allies or abandon them for a deal that history will remember as a catastrophic mistake. Friday's summit in Alaska isn't just about ending a war, it's about whether the principles that have kept the peace in Europe for 80 years will survive the age of Trump and Putin.